Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Ahmaduhu wa asta'inuhu wa astadihi wa astaghfiruhu wa u'minu bihi jalla wa ala wa la akfuruhu wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. As-salahu bil huda wa dinil haq liyudhhiruhu ala ad-din kullihi wa la kariha al-mushrikun. All praise belongs to Allah. We praise Him, we seek His help, His assistance and His guidance. We believe in Him and do not disbelieve in Him. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is a servant and messenger. Allah said that is Muhammad with Deen al-Haq, the religion, the way, and the methodology of truth, and this way of life known as Islam will rise to its proper position in this world, whether the mushriks like it or not. Of course, this is our standard Sunday program, and alhamdulillah, I'd just like to mention that after the khutbah this Friday, that the crackpot community in Oakland called. In fact, it was Khadijah. And I mentioned to her that, if you're following the Sunnah, you won't be calling me that much. If you got something to say, you have your husband call. Because you don't need to be talking to me about nothing, but she never does. You notice she's always on the line. All the other stuff is on the line. And so, she said, man, you gotta, so you rambling up there, you know what I mean? You sounding crazy and what have you. I said, no. I said, I happen to remember exactly what I was saying. I said, I was looking at our record. I was looking at our forecasts as Muslims. I was looking at our predictions. Now, you've been around, so you know all these forecasts. I said, look at here. I said, I mentioned 2011. I said that was 416 or 417, 2011. I said the Ummah is going to go through certain transitions right now. I said the final conclusion would be after they went through these certain stages of development, they're going to wind up with number 5 would be a collective approach, a collective spirit. And I called it in our writing regional unity. It would be the regional unity. Okay? And also I said in the proceeding that it would be a protracted struggle, a long-range struggle, not a temporary struggle, but a struggle over a long period of time, protracted. And that the community that carries that on have to have longevity. Martin Luther King said in his last speech in Memphis, before he got to the part where I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land, he said longevity has its place. And everybody would like to, live a long time. But then he said, I done set all of that aside now. And he was telling them, I may not get there with you, but the people will get to the promised land. But the key word is longevity. In our discussion, some of the keys were collective wahda, collective unity. Collective or structured planning and organization. And out of that would come a regional unity. And right at the same time, right after that, well, it was a few years later, they started the war in Yemen. That was 7 or 8 years ago. But now the war in Yemen was the richest Arab country in the world, with all of its allies fighting the poorest Arab country in the world. All the forecasters and all the predictors said this will be over in a hot minute. But the brothers and sisters in Yemen held on. With airports bombed, school bombs, wells bombs, and put out of, with starvation, with the news rift, with little babies with their arms, when you look at the news, was the same size of our finger. Remember all that we'd see on the news? They would bomb wedding parties, they would do anything they want. Why? Because they were friends of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was friends of America, and they could get away with all of that stuff. Now, of all people, they're friends with the Zionists. They just signed their little stuff the other day, so they're compatriots with the Zionists. And this is publicly. This is out in the public. And we all, remember, we always talk about going through this process over a long period of time. It would be a period which we call manifestation of defects. In other words, instead of it being like a lot of the lectures we used to give, pointing out who the criminals are, who the stooges are, that this would be a process where the defects of their behavior would be manifest clearly in the system. Remember that we talked about over and over again. In fact, everything we talk about is repetitive. We call it redundancy. If anybody remembers, we talked about the pattern of redundancy, that you go over something so regular and so often that it becomes like fighting in the ring. See, fighting in the ring, you do your training and you do everything in such a repetitive way, right, that you don't think about it. If you think about it, but you'll be hit, right? If you have to think, when they make a move, you automatically make a counter move or make a defensive move, right? And this is what makes you good. And remember, education, which we call tarbiyah, increase from the same word riba is interest. There's a big difference between education and training. You train animals. You educate people. You don't educate animals. Why? Because they're on that, they're considered to be on a lower responsive, a seal or whatever they call them, dolphin do something, you see the bucket of fish right there next to them, they throw them a fish, right? They get them to do something one time, then they throw them a fish. So they get them to do it again, they throw them another fish. Pretty soon, all you got to do is give the command and they will do whatever it is you've commanded them to do. And then they will get their reward. That's what you do with animals. They're trained. Boxing is a combat which you're doing face to face and you're too close, you don't have time to think. If you have to think, this guy's moved this way, he sits and throw a hook. If you got to do that, if you you're going to be beat all upside the head. You have to know when you see that guy foot come up like this, you know he's fixing to throw a right punch. You already know it because you're looking at the body language and all that. You're looking at the shoulders. All of those are from training, not education. So you train animals and you train people for physical combat, but you educate people. Education usually goes through a thought process, evaluation, you know what I mean, weighing and balancing the different evidence. That's different. The animal does that too, but the animal does it automatically. It's like, how does a pigeon, a carrier pigeon, you put a message on, they can fly back to wherever it was. I don't care how far it was away. How can they get back? You can't get back. You got more sense than they do. You got all kind of measurements and you got all kind of sundials. But the carrier pigeon can get back to the spot that he came from simply. It's all in the atmosphere. We don't know how they do it. No, we have some idea. But the pressures, the sounds, the environment, all telling. Because see, in a certain little area, we can't tell the difference, but they can. They fly a quarter mile up there, that's a little different. And they know they can follow that. Why? Because that's the hidayah that Allah gave them, the guidance. Okay? And so there's a difference between riba or tarbiyah, education, and training. You know, training is mainly for animals in combat and what have you. Everything is response. One of the reasons the police shoot so many black people, because number one, they already got their mind made up. As soon as they make any move that give them the excuse, they pull and shoot. Why they shoot? The last guy was shot 60 times, and some other people, one guy, poor in Cleveland, I think, he might have been hit 200 times. I don't know how many. It was 21 police. One police jumps up on the car, right, and shoots through the front window. And it's like unbelievable. Why? It's training. Why are the targets all black? Why they don't have white targets? You ever seen any white targets? They black. Targets are black. Why? Because of the training. You can pull and shoot at a black target. And not only you, why is it necessary for the last shooting, the brother is hit 60 times and they shot over, I don't know how many.
90.
Huh?
90.
90 times he said, what's the purpose of that?
In the back.
Yeah, in the back. What's the purpose of all of that? Okay, it's training. Why white people don't get shot like that? Training. He's not a threat, he's not da-da-da-da-da. You know who kills all the police in America over the last decades? White folks. Them right-wing white folks, they got a couple up on camera. You ought to see them crackers, boys, if you hear. They roll out of them cars and them trucks blasted at them because they feel like they white folks, we white folks, you know, they don't have a right to do. They roll out and the police not there with a gun, ready to shoot him because he's white. So they use that for a benefit. That has a lot to do with habitual behavior and part of the subject today. Well, let me speed up. We'll be here for a couple hours. So Khadijah called the other night, Friday night, and said, kind of rambling there, brother. And last Friday's cookbook was definitely not that. It was very focused. If you think about it. And I talked about our historical pattern. I said, no, lady. I said, that boy was on the money. I said, plus we talked about the high points in the book. We talked about the main thing we used was from one demonstration we had. In fact, it was in Dallas where Kennedy got shot. I said the program against the invasion of Gaddafi, you know what I mean, in Libya. It was a Free Libya move way back then. That's when it was 2000. I said, no. I said, what we said was, we outlined the process that the Arab world was going to go through at that time. And we said that in the final analysis, it's going to be regional unity. Right? And it'll go through that period of protracted struggle, which it did. Right? And then I said, and the next thing I talked about, I said, we talked about Lebanon. I said, we talked about Lebanon in 2006. I said, the invasion of Lebanon, I said, everybody was talking about Hezbollah and oh, they're going to get beat up and they was, I said, but by the time that was over, I said, don't worry about it. We called it Bashir Room. Remember that? We made 3 CDs, one on the, well, it was all in fact, it was in this month, it was in July, because I remember the 7th on. I said, look, we outlined exactly what was happening. I said, nobody else in America outlined that. Nobody else talked about regional unity. Nobody else has even talked about structured collective unity. I said, if you had our 2004 on Iraq, remember that one on Iraq? I said, we said then that Iraq would not become, we called it another Islamic state. But we said it won't be like Iran. We used the number 70%. I said, we're going to get 70% of what we want out of that. It was kind of specific, you know what I mean? And look, you look at Iraq, and you look what's happened since then, that's exactly what they have. They don't have the Islamic State of Iraq, like in Iran. But when you put the whole collection together, it's about 70% of what we would call the Islamic guys, from the other Islamic movements there, right? Even when you add Sistani in there, right? He might be against the Islamic government or Walayati Faqih, but he's still a Marija, and so he has to advocate for Islam. Maybe not Walayati Faqih, maybe not Walayati Faqih, but he has to advocate for Islam. Okay, so when you look at our record, absolutely nobody, and that's what we're saying so people will understand who they're dealing with here. And just because there's not a whole lot of people here has nothing to do with the role we're playing and the mission that we're fulfilling here. It don't make no difference what they say. We're not trying to please these people and the system or anything else. We just know that when we told them in 2006 that don't worry, Hezbollah is going to take care of business. What did they do? You know, there's books written on that period. And one of the things the weapons expert says about that period, they said Hezbollah had a plan from the very beginning. Remember they were saying they're mystic, we can't see them. And remember on American TV, they had Zionist soldiers sitting on tanks crying. You ever seen that in their life? Real tears, we can't find them, we can't see them. That was Hezbollah, right? What did the experts say about that non-conventional warfare? That's what they use. They call it asymmetric warfare, but that means non-conventional warfare. They said Hezbollah had become so skilled, they was fighting the country, that means the Israelis, with 4th and 5th generation weapons. 4th and the latest technical weapons, right? 4th and 5th generation. So right now, if all the super weapons are 5th generation, at that time it was in transition from 4th and 5th generation weapons. They said that Hezbollah combined the combination from 2nd and 3rd generation weapons, because they always give the people old weapons, the other people, right? Right. They combined 2nd and 3rd generation weapons in a new configuration. This is what they say, that was able to defeat their 4th and 5th generation of weapons. It's just like trying to use an old cannon where you stick the cannonballs down there and you defeat people with guided missiles. Stuff like that, that's what it meant. So Hezbollah, the party of God, which is our friends, like I said last week when we was over on H Street, I had to write them back and tell them to stop sending us letters of friendship with the Hezbollah logo on the outside, because the government monitors it. But we had all the programs that we had overseas and everything. All the brothers in Syria, all the brothers in Hezbollah, every Islamic movement, those that were successful like Rashid Ghannouchi in Tunisia, friends of ours, all of those people, whether it's the successful Islamic movements, wherever they was, they all, and what did we say about Ikhwan al-Muslimin? We say Ikhwan should slow down and reject what they had. Remember, see, we have to tell the people, remind the people, but we've said all of this over and over again. Number one, we was telling the brothers here associated with, not Hamas, but Ikhwani type.